Hey everyone, John from Nintendo Life here, yada yada yada. Look, July is a really busy month and I don't want to waste your time because there's so much going on. There's a sequel to a game that came out over a decade ago. There's localizations for games that have been left in Japan on different consoles for years. There's indie games that look fantastic. There's a remastered Zelda game. There's just so many good games coming along that let's just jump into this. Go on, pre-recorded John, take it away.
On the 6th of July comes Ys 9 Monstrum Nox. Now, the Ys series has been with us for decades, and many gamers played it way back on the TurboGrafx with Ys Books 1 and 2. However, fairly recently with games like Ys Origins, the series has had a huge resurgence, and the predecessor, Ys 8, brought the series into 3D for the very first time. Now, Ys 9 isn't entirely new, as it came to PlayStation 4 way back in February. It was very well received though, with tons of glowing reviews. So is this just another late port? Well, not really. Ever since the PSP, there have been tons of Ys fans that played the series portably. This continued on the Vita with Ys Memories of Celceta, and now here we are on the Switch. The Switch is the new Vita. Now, Ys 9 doesn't exactly evolve the series like Ys 8 did, but it definitely refines it in many ways. This is a really fun and fairly brief RPG, clocking in at around 30 hours. Huge legacy, very tightly paced, and it's gonna be great on the Switch. And on the exact same day, also on the 6th of July, comes the Silver Case 2425. Now this series has a long and deep legacy, being the very first game that Suda51 made for Grasshopper. The PlayStation original launched and stayed in Japan in 1999, but it got remade for PC in 2016 and launched on PlayStation 4 in 2017. 2425 compiles both the remake of Silver Case and its sequel, The 25th Ward, and this compilation is also not entirely new, as it came to PlayStation 4, but only in Japan. Now, none of these are brand new ports or even brand new localizations, but it is the first time the series leaves PlayStation consoles, if we discount PC too. As I'm sure you all know, Suda51 is a wacky dude, and his humor and style comes out in spades in these games. Their visual novels focused around crime solving, and the tone is off the chart. If you're a No More Heroes fan, definitely check these games out. This is Suda's legacy, and it deserves to be played. There's so little like this out there. And then 3 days later, on the 9th of July, comes Monster Hunter Stories 2 Wings of Ruin. Now, I'm not a huge Monster Hunter fan, but the original game on 3DS really resonated with me. It's just great going out there, and instead of destroying a bunch of monsters, you bond with them, you bring them on your team. It's a very different dynamic to the core series, but it's also a great way to get into the series. The gameplay is way more accessible, basically being a traditional JRPG. And if you are a fan, you get to see all these monsters in a very different style and light. In fact, the art style is gorgeous. This is the kind of game that decades from now, we're going to look back on and say, this still looks great. The original game didn't have the deepest combat in the world, but it does seem they're enhancing things for the sequel. In fact, if you want to try it yourself, well, there's a demo. All your save data carries over to the main game too, so you're wasting no time in playing it. And while I thought the combat in the first game could use a lot of refining, the world and its design were amazing. There's so much energy and vibrance, and it just carries the entire experience. It's a true effort too, with a ton of voice acting and cohesive storytelling. This just looks like a really great and cozy RPG, and a brilliant way to build off the Monster Hunter universe. And one of the biggest games of the month is The Legend of Zelda Skyward Sword HD, coming on the 16th of July. Now, this has always been a pretty divisive Zelda game. Some people love it, some people despise it. I'm on neither extreme. There's certain parts I don't love, but the dungeons are so good. I'd go as far to say that some of them are my favourites in the entire series. The ancient cistern, the sand ship, the mining facility, they're all fantastic. Heck, I even love the controls. Back on Wii, it required Motion Plus because your movements are one-to-one with your sword. So it's not just waggle waggle waggle, you need to be very precise with where you aim your sword. This works extremely well, and hopefully the Joy-Con can mirror the experience. But for those who don't want motion, the right analog stick can also mirror the sword. Personally, I'd rather stick with motion, but for accessibility and for those who just don't want to use motion at all, this is fine. But Skyward Sword also certainly has negatives. Now, I don't think being linear qualifies as a negative, but the pacing of the linearity certainly leaves a lot to be desired. Maybe that'll be fine-tuned, we don't know just yet. The game has quality of life improvements, but we don't know what they are yet. For reference though, games like Twilight Princess HD had faster climbing animations, and when you start the game up it doesn't tell you what a rupee is every single time, and there were fewer tears of light to collect, and you could transform into a wolf with a tap of a button. These definitely made the game a lot better, so hopefully we can expect things like that in Skyward Sword. Either way, it looks great and it runs at 60 FPS this time. As a big Zelda fan, I can't wait. Next up on the 20th of July comes Cris Tales. Now, Cris Tales is a long anticipated indie RPG. The developers say it's inspired by games like Chrono Trigger and Final Fantasy VI and Valkyrie Profile. Does a better sentence exist? Probably not. But while it's inspired by them, this game is clearly doing its own thing. First, visually, it's stunning. If you took a screenshot, you'd probably think this is a side-scroller, but you can move in 3D space. There is nothing out there that looks like this, it's just beautiful. And here's how you get me, time travel elements. You can learn from the past to adapt the present to change the future, and many events are dynamic as well, so different playthroughs will give you different experiences. Time even plays a part in the combat, where you can warp your enemies into the past or into the future. It just looks amazing, and if there's any game to keep an eye on this month, it's probably this one. This has the chance to be a true RPG classic, and the developers are saying it's just 20 hours long, which is a brilliant time for an RPG like this. I really can't wait, and this isn't about Switch, but it's also on Game Pass. We don't care where you play, just give Cris Tales a go. And on the exact same day, the 20th of July, comes Cotton Reboot. I've always really wanted to try this series, but boy, is it expensive to do so. Cotton's been around for about 3 decades, and it's been on a ton of different platforms. TurboGrafx, Mega Drive, PlayStation, Sega Saturn, Dreamcast, PS2. Over the years, there's been a lot of stuff, but not much of it's left Japan. But despite the games mostly being in Japan and fetching for a pretty high price tag, that hasn't diminished the game's quality at all. Cotton is a shmup, labelled as a cute-em-up rather than a shoot-em-up, and it has many tropes of the genre, just in a very adorable style. Cotton Reboot is a remake of the first game, and there's both a brand new style and also a traditional pixel mode. Not everyone's gonna like the new style, so it's very cool that both are represented. Now, this game actually released 4 months ago in Japan, and we reviewed it. We gave it a pretty glowing review with an 8 out of 10. If you're an old school shmup fan, absolutely give this one a go. And on the 27th of July comes Darius Burst, another Chronicle EX+. This one also came out in Japan early, and we reviewed it. We gave it a 7 out of 10 because it's a fairly bare-bones port, but the core game is great. Now, the original Darius Burst was a dual-screen arcade machine, so the setup is very bizarre here. What you get is basically an ultra-wide display. There's a lot of empty black space to achieve this, but it still looks pretty great. In fact, there was a PlayStation Portable port back in the day, and that's pretty expensive now. So if you wanted a nice, cheap, and enhanced way to play Darius Burst, this is a great way to do so. The Darius series has been running since around 1987, so this is a very deep legacy franchise with a big fanbase. This is one of the more bombastic entries, and there's even some brand new scenarios exclusive to EX+. If you're a long-running fan or just want to try the series, this is a pretty interesting point to jump in. Okay, so the 27th of July is a very busy day, and it's not just Darius Burst in this game, but there's another one too. But first, the Great Ace Attorney Chronicles is finally coming to the West. For those who don't know, the Great Ace Attorney came to Japan in 2 different installments back on 3DS, but it was never localized. This stars the ancestor of Phoenix Wright and takes place in Old London. There's an entirely new cast of characters, including Herlock Sholmes. Yeah, that's real. And these games are just such a big deal to finally be localized. Many gave up hope, but in just a few weeks, these are coming to Switch for a budget price. They're $32.99 on the eShop, and keep into account these are 2 different games. Great Ace Attorney Adventures 1 and Great Ace Attorney Adventures 2. They look stunning in HD, and of course there's some brand new English voice acting. July's a month full of huge games, but this one to many people is probably one of the biggest. And if you've never played Ace Attorney, the series basically revolves around courtroom dramas. They're usually quite lighthearted, and you basically listen in and find contradictions to what they're saying. It sounds simple, but the writing is so good and carries the entire game. But like we were saying, the 27th of July is a very busy day, and there's another long-awaited sequel coming out on the exact same day. Neo: The World Ends With You. The first game came to DS 14 years ago. Good lord, where did the time go? Since then, there have been ports and teasers and rumours, but most fans had pretty much given up hope on anything actually happening. But then, out of nowhere, came an anime and a sequel. Now, Neo: The World Ends With You is a full 3D game with a pretty different combat system. If you want to try it yourself, there's a demo out there, but so far, it's been really promising. The game's being produced by Nomura, who I'm sure a lot of modern fans know for Kingdom Hearts and the Final Fantasy VII Remake, so expect some wacky stuff. There's a style to The World Ends With You that other games just don't come close to capturing. There's something about teenagers that most forms of fiction just don't get. It's very hard to write a teenager apparently, but The World Ends With You completely nails it. Both the writing and the voice acting seem incredible so far. It's very hard to follow up the DS game, given that was an all-time classic RPG with a very unique control scheme. But even if Neo ends up falling a little short in terms of gameplay, which it may not, the story is pretty much guaranteed to be great. This is one of the most exciting sequels in a long time, and many of us cannot wait for this game. We didn't think it would happen, but here it is, baby. But the day is not done, because also on the 27th of July comes Samurai Warriors 5. Now, when I can, I will always stand the mysterious Murasame Castle, which was a bonus mode in Samurai Warriors 3. It's not in 5, but I'm basically saying, yeah, try 3 as well. But anyway, Samurai Warriors 5. I'm sure many Nintendo fans have played their fair share of Nintendo crossover Musos, but have you played a traditional one? There's Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity, Fire Emblem Warriors, but this series goes deep with its own characters and lore. But if you've played any of them, you pretty much know what to expect. You make your way through these huge maps, battling massive amounts of enemies at a time. Samurai Warriors is a bit more focused on objectives rather than just capturing bases like in Dynasty Warriors, so there's quite a bit of diversity to the gameplay. Fighting styles are also very different to Dynasty Warriors, even if the base gameplay and controls are pretty similar. But yeah, if you've enjoyed the Nintendo crossovers, then absolutely give this one a go. And yeah, I know it's gonna be a busy day. Alright, mixing things up. One day later, on the 28th of July, is Unbound Worlds Apart. This is a really interesting Metroidvania where you traverse through two worlds at once. Essentially there's one main world, but at any time you can bring up a portal around you showcasing a different dimension. It's the same level design, but things are a bit different, like perhaps one world has lava whereas the other doesn't, or maybe one has spikes and the other doesn't. So you go back and forth between these two dimensions on the fly and it looks really interesting. This was kickstarted way back in 2019 with a $40,000 goal, and it met it. So clearly people are sold by this premise. You get different portals and powers as the game goes on, and some even defy gravity. It looks like it goes in some really interesting places, and of course there are tons of Metroidvania indie games out there, but this one seems to really stand out. But we're not going too far, as another day later, on the 29th of July, is Blaster Master Zero 3. This series has just been consistently great. Takes the NES classic Blaster Master and brings it to new heights. Now this one does appear to be more of the same, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. You still go back and forth between on-foot gameplay and the tank, and the visuals are still very much 8-bit inspired. It's not reinventing the wheel, but the last two games were very solid, and if all you want is more Blaster Master, then, well, here you are. Not on the 27th, but rather the 30th, comes BUSTAFELLOWS. We've had a few visual novels in this video, and well, yeah, here's another one. However, this one has the potential to be 80 hours long. This came to Japan back in 2019 and picked up a pretty passionate fanbase. It's a mix of mystery, romance, and murder. You can't have one without the other. You play as a woman who has the ability to leap into the bodies of others for a very short time, and she can romance 5 different dazzling dudes. There's a crooked lawyer, a hitman, an autopsy specialist. As you can probably guess, this can get pretty weird and wacky, but it also seems full of style, and the music sounds incredible. If you're a visual novel fan, it seems this one will keep you engaged for quite some time.
So what do you think about the games coming out in July, and which ones caught your interest? Let us know in the comments below, and of course go to that subscribe button and inform it that The World Ends With You is getting a sequel. And we'll see you next time. Bye everyone.